Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome the Minister to the House. And I would like to commend the outgoing Minister in this area, Minister Fitzgerald, in putting forward what I do think is overall a very progressive piece of legislation and one that moves us somewhat forward. The amendment we were debating at the point of adjournment was one which I think is, however, essential if we are to ensure that this bill goes far enough to make a significant difference. I've acknowledged that the Minister who spoke previously has indicated that around, for example, Amendment 1 around definitions, that the Department are, I believe, looking themselves to put forward definitions, and it's certainly something I'm happy to work with them and to see what proposals and engage with them constructively between now and report stage in that. But the amendment which is very crucial here is Amendment 52. And Amendment 52 establishes very clearly an offence of controlling and coercive behaviour. And to be frank, the arguments which we have heard against the introduction of this very necessary offence have been inadequate. They've talked to the complexity, but we know that all law comes with complexities. And they go also against the advice we've had from really all of the NGOs working in this area. And I just want to mention a case which has emerged in the interim period since we last debated Amendment 52. The very tragic deaths which we saw in the UK of a man who killed his wife and a daughter, and whose two sons have given extensive testimony, which I think is important to listen to, about the experience of domestic violence, and we know that it chimes with all of the case studies and all of the evidence and experience that our NGOs in Ireland have told us. They talked again and again about the word controlling, a controlling vitriolic bully. They talked about the homicides which took place as the result of decades of abusive and controlling behaviour. They talked about these not being a single event, but rather a culmination of a lifetime of struggle. And it is also very notable that this premeditated, it seems from the evidence, crime took place after his wife and his daughter had looked to establish themselves separately in a separate home. The reason that this is important is there is a real concern that our legislation as it stands at the moment is not adequate. It is not adequate to talk about assault when we don't talk about the patterns of behaviour surrounding that. We cannot talk about individual events. It is not adequate to talk about harassment, and we know if we look to the transcripts of cases, when people go into court, the kinds of things you get asked in relation to assault and to harassment is, why are you responding to the texts? Why did you return to the house? None of that recognises the reality of coercion, of control, and of the manipulation and threatening environment which is created by coercion and control. Yes, it is a difficult area for us to step into, but it is a much more difficult area for the women predominantly, but also women, children, men who live in that environment. And it behoves us as a state to engage with this. I understand that there is move to look towards controlling and coercive behaviour a little bit more in terms of the issuing, for example, of orders in terms of protection orders and barring orders. And the idea that a breach of order may, for example, prove to be one way in which we could ensure a criminal consequence. However, this again neglects the key fact that it is at the point when somebody takes a step out of an environment of control and coercion to try to reach for help that they often become particularly vulnerable, that they may be most vulnerable to an escalation in danger and violence. So if there are situations where somebody has evidence and feels that they can come forward and put forward a crime of controlling and coercive behaviour, we should allow them to do that and ensure that they have the double and appropriate protection of a criminal prosecution, and that a criminal prosecution can bring in that area. It's also very important to state controlling and coercive behaviour is not necessarily a compound and complex issue. It can be prosecuted alongside a situation of assault. So it in no way prevents conviction in relation to an issue like assault. It doesn't prevent conviction on an issue like harassment. It simply provides another thread which can be, and another strand, and something that moves beyond those individual instances to a pattern of behaviour. And I know that we have more esteemed legal experts, such as Senator Batchik in the House, who have spoken about the fact that in the UK, in England and Wales, the provisions of Section 76 and Section 77 of their Serious Crime Act, that we are seeing successful prosecutions in respect of this area. And we're seeing an increase in prosecutions in respect of controlling and coercive behaviour because the courts are learning how to prosecute it. But I would also say that the signal that we send in respect of controlling coercive behaviour being regarded as a crime by this state, not regarded as a matter of dispute, as a matter of civil, is essential. And if we look to, for example, the issue of marital rape, which has had very few successful prosecutions in Ireland, but the signal that it sent, that no, it is not okay, no, it is not a matter of personal disagreement or argument or complexity, there are behaviours which we as a state regard as unacceptable and criminal, that was very important, and that signal is also very important. So I'm really urging the Minister to engage with us, to accept this amendment. Of course, I recognise that the Department may have changes they wish to make to this amendment at report stage. And, you know, having successfully, I hope, passed this amendment at committee stage, I certainly, and I believe our group, and I'm sure many across the House, would be very happy to work with the Department around the nuance or detail of any aspect of this. But it is a fundamental, I think, crucial and red line issue if this bill is to do what it wants to do. Thank you very much.